Good morning and welcome to Managing Life's Changes, a daily chat about everything that concerns our ability to communicate with one another. And we'll take it from the technicals and fundamentals, even when we talk about a resume builder, a network builder, and a profile, establishing one's profile in order to reach out to certain groups, reach out to certain individuals, establish rapport, and therefore long-term both professional and personal relationships. And we always refer back to intent. What is your intent? Because in many cases, unless we really identify what it is that we personally want and need, and then find the correct, shall I say, code, sequence of reaching out to others, we're usually not successful. And because in many cases there is no tried and true template because of the cultures, nationalities, the timing, the expression you're in a certain space, we lose the enthusiasm. We lose that eagerness that perhaps that brought us to the table. So today's discussion, get the monkey off your back. And this was actually thought about because of the amount of resources that we have at our disposal. That I can sit in my house, I can sit in my gazebo if we have one. Heck, I can walk into the forest with my tablet and I can access more information than I can possibly put together or even need, quite frankly, even need. So part of the challenge, and this is fundamental to communications, effective communications, is to weed out, to analyze. And there are professions that have that as part of their mantra, part of their process, part of their methodology, if I can use that term. So let's see where this discussion can take us. Many of you know I have come out of some 20 odd years of mortgage banker. I had an interior design service up in New York when I first came to America for about 9 years. Design in Display, that was the name of the business. And it started off in my visual merchandising world in the retail. I thought I was going to be the next interior designer, like a gentleman called Don Gia. He brought custom interior design services to the average person, the average home. Whereas initially, and not to say that his price points were anywhere near like an IKEA and even the home furnishings department of a Walmart, because some of his incredibly beautifully designed and reproduced designs, because over the decades, we tend to take what preceded and we develop it, right? We give it a different design, different meaning. Well, some of his furniture was kind of expensive. A simple chaise lounge might run you like $4,500, and that's with no upholstery. You can't sit in the gym with no upholstery. And then some of you may know that I moved out of the interior design into mortgage banking. That's a story in and of itself, because my mother got really ill, and my family decided, brothers and sisters said, "Oh, you got to come home and take care of this," which I did. All of that is to say, we're communicating all the time. It is not to be embarrassed by. It is not to be hindered by. It is not to think of your experience any less than any other that you might hear, because it's our interpretation of what we went through and then what we do with that experience, those skills, those aptitudes, those abilities that we create. That is effective communication, because now we take that out into the world. If you are embarrassed, if you are hindered, if you feel belittled, then you're going to be guarded, right? Who was it who said, I'm in a nutshell? And that's how many of us feel. Moving forward into corporate training and facilitation of various services, specifically mortgage banking. We did a number of projects within the project management world, and that's when I was introduced formally to project management. And I love it. Not only did I love it, I still love it because it's a structured approach to address uncertainty by bringing resources and applying those resources in a manner that gets you as close as possible to your desired goals and objectives. As the official meaning is, a project is an effort to deliver a good, a service, or a benefit. Well, that's what we're doing all the time, isn't it? Every day of our lives, every moment, if it's with our loved ones, if it's with our children, if it's taking care of senior family members, if it's a guardian of someone else's child, if it's a guardian of our own minds, which I dare say is probably the biggest challenge at any time in human history. In the environment that you're born into and the experiences that you have, we have to constantly feel our way through. We have to be learning, adapting, taking in information. And if we're not willing to do that, if we haven't been prepped, right? If we haven't been introduced to the world of evaluating our circumstances, the feedback we get from the world, from our loved ones, then, and I've found this to be true in many areas of the work that I'm now doing as a coach and mentor, we always have doubt. And that doubt can be removed simply by having some of the methodologies and processes and strategies that I shared with you. I myself, I'm studying solution-focused brief therapy. I've said it before. I will continue to say it because I believe the questioning process, one, it challenges our own personal reality, how we come to that conversation, how we come to that place that we're supposed to be either helping or being helped. Two, it then allows us, and I think to a certain extent demands of us, that we evaluate what we believe to be our reality. It's like, oh, wait a minute, I just want to ask you a simple question. But before we even get there, we have to do some homework. Because once we send that question out, and we've seen it time and time again, I mean, my goodness, ordering a cup of coffee these days can be traumatic, right? Once we send out that question, once we send out that energy, once we send out that request to offer in helping and or for help, then the environment interprets it and throws it back at us. So getting the monkey off your back. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to take you to a little safe island here. You're going to hear from time to time, not only my birds, my nature's best, there you go, nature's best. You're also going to hear a few dogs or cats. We're doing some renovation on the house, and it's I'm doing the renovation. It's not like I've got a crew of people in here. Hey, you got to do all this and put up the plastic. And yeah, the dogs are going to do their thing. That's part of managing change through effective communications, where perhaps they're unsettled, and I haven't considered every angle, and my audience may hear a roof roof or a meow from time to time. So let's get that monkey off my back by telling you what to expect. So part of that is, we know when we go to a doctor, right? He or she is going to say, they are going to say, tell me how you feel. Based on what you've told me, this is what I propose. That is taking us as patients. You can use the same approach so that the person you're speaking with or the group that you're speaking with understands that there are elements outside of your, remember the other day I said not to use the word control. They are outside your control. You can manage your own state and the state of your audience or the state of the people you're speaking with. At the same time, you're letting them know that there might be an issue, right? There may be times of interruption. There may be times of elements that happen that are outside your purview. When we talk about uh, a boat being launched, right? Even if you're in a lake and you just want to get across the lake, you may have to row in a slightly different direction because of the drift of the lake's current. The wind is causing that, right? So that's another area where you plan for and you execute because you know these things are going to change, right? Planes are another one, right? We flew from, I think it was Heathrow, and into New York, sometimes LaGuardia, sometimes JFK. Each of those flight plans had to be adjusted. It's not that I know this, it's that I anticipated, that I expected. So instead of communicating to myself, oh my goodness, we're 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour late, this is the reason. And they are outside of the purview and management of those who are flying the plane, sailing the boat, executing on a contract, moving through a project, going on a vacation. Those of you who haven't registered your car, right now is a very difficult time. If you bought a car, very difficult time to get that car registered. So we have to take the monkey off our back by realizing the environment we're in. And we do that by communicating to ourselves. So that when we do go out and people are barking, call those junkyard dogs, we can choose to engage or not engage. That's intelligence. That is emotional intelligence. Because we don't always have to go there. We don't always have to make everything a challenge. Best of intentions, right? The best of intentions were to get somewhere at a certain time. And unfortunately, sometimes that's not going to work. We saw that with many students who were traveling just before the shutdown and the multiple shutdowns, traveling from state to state. And by the way, these are observations that over time, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, they are repetitive. So it doesn't really make sense, does it? To always be in a state of frustration if you're paying attention to life itself and realizing that these ebbs and flows are indeed part of life. Project management. Again, I'm apologetic to myself for coming so late to the profession. And yet I see senior and even new project managers expressing a more human emotional frustration. That's the difference, by the way. It's not that they don't know the technicals and fundamentals, although we all can improve. It's the emotional energy that we allow to escape unharnessed, right? Like a horse, right? Like a bull. Maybe the bull is not a good example because bulls are not necessarily tamed, right? Certainly a horse, certainly our canine friends. We come to a profession, we come to an environment, we come to a conversation, and we're bringing baggage that's not useful. We're bringing baggage that disrupts our communication, that doesn't give us optimum levels of performance. And then we question it. How come this does not fit into that? I'm not going to give you that colloquial term, but square, round, you figure it out. We bring the wrong stuff to the conversation. And as I mentioned, the studies with solution-focused brief therapy, this gentleman, psychiatrist, Elliot Connie, can just Google him and you'll see incredible amount of information that you will have to sift through. At the same time, the methodology works because it allows for an engagement of understanding of two parties or more. You must trust the process. You can also look at it and say, well, how was my past experiences with the methods and processes and knowledge that I have been introduced to or I have accepted, right, as useful? How has that really borne fruit? You see, reflection. And you can do it every single moment of every single day of every situation that you're in. And we're going to give you some examples today. We're going to really dig into this because I've been doing it for about, I'd say, the better part of 8 months, maybe even longer. And it's opened my skill sets up to being able to address almost any situation. And I'm learning some of the more, should I use the term, desperate situations can be addressed as well. It requires you, the practitioner, to believe in yourself and the process. There's the difference. In many other learning modes, learning modalities, we're making the person receiving the information responsible for being able to apply it. And there's a problem with that communication. Because again, look at the data, look at the statistics. Most of us are disengaged, right? And of course, buying a home. And that's where when I was working in the mortgage industry and looking at secondary market transactions and the experience I had with prime lenders was that the market was constantly fluctuating. And even as conduits were being delivered, rates and terms were still being negotiated. And I just found that fascinating. And I realized that in many cases, it comes right back to the fundamentals of communication. Oh, some of you might notice I've got a little banner down there. What are we doing with that banner? These platforms are really cool. They are very, very cool. There's so much you can do. It's like being in your own radio studio at home. Let's see what I can, hold on, let's see what we got here. We've got banners. I can take this off. Check this out. I can take that off. There you go. And then this one, check out this one. Identifying intangible assets and producing tangible results. I'm going to leave that up there for a little bit, and we might come back to it at a later date for a totally different discussion. Today's discussion, this morning's discussion, and getting the monkey off your back. And I'm framing it in a number of situations that I'm quite sure you found yourself in and or willingly entered into. And now giving you some examples of how to address those situations. And we took you to the safe island by saying getting the monkey off your back can be if you're sailing a boat, flying a plane, and the pilots will tell you these are some of the challenges, these are the weather conditions, these are the environments we're going into. We talked about best of intentions. You can frame, you can communicate to the people that you're having a conversation with by letting them know this is my intent. Because it takes away the doubt, the questioning, the uncertainty of that engagement. We obviously always will bring up project management. We have introduced you to solution-focused brief therapy, which is also known as solution-focused brief questions. Now, there again, talking about taking the monkey off your back, the word brief is like a misnomer because in many modalities of psychiatry, there are 6 fixed set of sessions that you'll go through. 6 sessions, 6 months, 1 year, blah, blah. Conversely, and this is why the practitioner of solution-focused brief therapy needs to understand that their level of comfort, their level of competency has to be at such a level that when they're speaking with that client, they understand that their ability to bring that client along the client's path through their questioning and the feedback is such that they have that fiduciary financial humility care to deliver, right? In other words, if you feel you're in deep water, get out the lake. Buying a home, an incredible experience for most that we on the outside think everyone's on the same wavelength. We're buying a home, we're going to live in the home, we're going to have fun in the home, we're going to grow together. And yet the home can become a jail. I wrote a book called My Castle, My Jail, Whatever Happened to the American Dream. And it's morphed, it's changed, not just because of the piece of real estate. More importantly, it's because of the meaning of what a home brings to those individuals within the house. And a classic, real cultural classic, is where this new burgeoning Indian middle class and even Japanese middle class no longer wish to take care of their grandparents and even their parents. And we've even seen that here in America, created within 25, 30 years. Living homes, long-term care, didn't have that in the 50s and 60s. People are willing, and there's money behind, there's your caveat, there's money behind sticking your parents and grandparents in what I call a living mortuary. Yes, I can come from that perspective because I took care of my parents, I took care of my Miriam's parents. Yes, you have to anchor, I believe, today, because of the sensitivity of people, you have to anchor your statements in your experience. So I'm letting you know I disagree with those senior living centers, because it's basically a staging place where you go to die. Hospice, I understand. Dementia, I understand. The day-to-day care is another way of communicating with your loved ones, of getting a chance for them to tell you how they managed in hard times, in good times, how they would look at their perspective, perhaps on a challenge you're facing at work with a prospective loved one, someone you wish to go out with, you wish to develop a relationship with. And I think we miss that communication. We miss that value. We think we're cool. We think we've got the accolades, we've got the academics. That has nothing to do with an effective relationship. I can say that because I'm 27 years with Miriam. I'm at an age where I believe we could have another 27 more if she'll have me. Am I worthy? So, communication. Effective communication helps to manage change, helps to manage the conversations in our mind. So let's jump right in. Let's see what we have. Exclamations of what is to be expected. Right. So some wording here. Exclamations of what to expect. Ladies and gentlemen, right? You get your attention. Ladies and gentlemen, bam, 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 bam. These are the points. Let's see what we have here. You're using these introductory phrases to gain the attention of your audience and then take them to that safe island, that place of this is what we're going to experience. This is what we envision. This is based on our experience, based on what you have told me, the physician conversation, right? So you can take any one of those and many more and begin to frame out how you communicate with someone else based on what you're doing, based on the severity, based on the industry, the level of conversation as well, right? A child as opposed to an adolescent, although I'm not sure if there's a difference. Kidding. If there is young adults coming together, a young boy, a young girl, wanting to develop a relationship. How do you communicate to be open, carefree, and yet cautious? I remember, and this is why I mentioned earlier, I don't believe in putting parents into these living homes, taking care of my mother. And it was quite incredible to have a conversation with her because she was one of 13, second one in 13. You know what that means? It means she had the responsibility of helping her younger kid, her younger brothers and sisters. I think she had four brothers. She told me how to manage life. She shared with me how she managed her environment. I'm one of three and I'm the youngest. So I can take that information, I can take that resource. That's like a library, right, of knowledge, a book of business, right, that she created and she shared with me. So based on what she told me, I can now take that into my world, my time, and see how it works, like the little antennae of a slug. I used this the other day, and the person said, "Yeah, that's true. I saw one the other day." And the antenna is like feeling the temperature of the air, the velocity of the air. The air also has a density to it, right? A weight to it, and it provides sensory perceptions. This stuff is so cool because you can literally go from any one environment to another and take certain resources and observations and apply it to your world, to what you're about to do or not. So let's talk about managers. Here you are going off to work and you've got this asinine manager. I myself do not. This is Malanga tea, by the way. You know, I tell you every morning to do your little meditation, 15 minutes, half an hour, while you're moving through the house, quite frankly. And my wife was ordering some more because I threw out the box, and she heard me the other day on the program and said, "You got to show them the box, otherwise Malanga tea, the heck is that?" I'm gonna show you the box hopefully in the next couple of days. We take the tea out of the box and we put it into this ceramic dish. It's just a cool way of keeping it instead of in this box. But I'm going to show you the box because as part of meditation, just as I showed you that I also juice, these are rituals. These are preparing to keep monkeys off my back for the day, for the moment, and also addressing an interruption that may occur and not escalating, right? So we said managers, not monkeys, managers. Managers. I recall working for a telemarketing company, and I was the training manager. And they flew me around the country, even up to which the first time I found out, because obviously I'm not paying attention to every little thing in the world, St. John, New Brunswick, Canada, which is 1 hour ahead of us on the eastern seaboard of the United States of America. And then they also sent me down to Yuma, Arizona, which I found not as acceptable to me because, as I expressed to my wife one day, I said, I now know why I don't like Yuma, Arizona, and that's because it has no green. New Jersey has green. Yuma, Arizona does not have any green. Although I did see I think it was a lettuce field, and that's what triggered it. I said, "Oh, the green, we need green, right? The plane. Oh my goodness, what a bad, what have you?" So, dealing with the manager, and this particular person used to really ride me every time, and I came back into my library. That's why, by the way, I have this wall behind me. That's my Chupsky wall of things that I've done in the past that also help me project into the future. That's another conversation. So in going into my library, I found some material that spoke about managing your manager. I had never read it in that fashion before. Partnerships, collaborations, knowing what your responsibilities are, collaborating with your team members in order to align the interests to the strategy. Great stuff. I just didn't have an issue at the time or even before to have to manage someone who was basically insecure. That's what they're projecting when they do that to you, micromanage. They're insecure. And that can come from many, many directions and history of their own working climate, what they've been introduced to. So the material I was reading said, find out exactly what their responsibilities are. What are they charged in delivering, in producing? And once I understood that, it was like bang, like the key sequence on a computer, right? If you're doing a sequence in Excel or Access or any programming, quite frankly. I came in the next week and I decided to ask the questions that were pertinent to their reporting to their upline, to their supervisors, their superiors. And at first, you could see the wheels in her mind questioning, why are you asking this? And I framed it by saying, I understand this is what we have to deliver. From then on, and every day I came in, I just kept drilling her. I kept drilling her. And after about a week or two, she realized that I was serious about her not riding me with those micromanagement mentality, with that micromanagement mentality. And from there, it was kind of plain sailing. By not getting lost in the moment and the frustration of not understanding what's going on, you can step back and think of what is the reason behind this form of communication, this behavior. And then you can go and do some homework, some research, find out how you think you should address the situation, and come back with a strategy. It may not work 100%. It may not even work to the percent or the degree that you wish. It will change the trajectory of that relationship. It will let that person know you're aware. You're aware of responsibilities. You are concerned and are taking action to address the needs of your responsibility and the responsibility of that group, that project, that initiative. There will always be individuals who are threatened by you. There will always be individuals who want to contain you. You have to be like the phoenix. You have to be like the phoenix. You have to be willing to get scorched, not just rise, get scorched. You have to be willing to get scorched in life. Parents is another big one. Because of my work in the field of, shall I say, behavioral and developmental services, I found that in many cases, just as I've expressed before, with children putting their parents in long-term care facilities. In fact, it's not even putting them in the long-term care facilities. It's the lack of ability to find resources that can help the parent stay with you. That's a big one. Yeah, I believe in that. Yes, I do. Because of the value of what your parents can share with you. See, that's the difference. I'm not saying don't put them in there because you shouldn't put them in there. I'm saying you're missing the intangible assets of a conversation, of their perspective, of their time, of their resourcefulness, of their resilience, of their attitude, of their ability to make something out of nothing. And we're all so scared of having nothing. Yet we have so much, right? There's a great plaque on my wall. I have three of them. There's this huge, I think it's a pelican. I'm not sure if it's a pelican, but it's a big bird. And it has a frog in its mouth. And you know that head is going down the gullet of that bird. Yet the frog's arms are reaching out around the neck of the bird holding on for dear life, and it says, don't ever give up. Understanding that the people you're working with and people that raised you, even if their perspective is inappropriate for you, that is a communication, a decision that you've come to terms with that sends you off on a different trajectory, right? If you are coming from an environment of pain, suffering, and angst, you now have been told a blueprint for what life you do not want. That's incredibly powerful. You then reach out to resources that can support this new direction that you're going in. That's the difference. That's effective communications. That's managing life's changes through effective communications. And because of this format, a podcast, for goodness sake, we can discuss these issues. We can bring these concerns to the table and find out there are millions of people around the world that have this disconnect with loved ones, with managers, with people that they've formed relationships with, husbands and wives, live-ins, people who have fostered other relationships. There are many kinds: sororities, fraternities, social groups, theological groups. If we're not sensitive to what we really need, how we take in information, how we process that information, we're always going to find ourselves on fight with the world, because we believe in our minds, we've processed that no one is listening to us, no one is paying attention. And in many cases, it is about expressing ourselves and being willing to listen back to what is coming back from life, right? What can I learn from that? It's not that I agree with it. It's not that it's even supportive of me. It's what can I learn from it that then sets your mind, because your mind is capable of comprehending anything. We know in abusive environments, for example, love and hate, we ask the question, what is the opposite of love? I'll leave that out there. What is the opposite of love? I spoke with a young lady the other night, and she gave me her response, and we went into a conversation. And I learned something from her. So managers research what it is their needs, goals, objectives, responsibilities, and then do a little research to bring that information in a way that is non-threatening. And again, you will have to test the waters to do in delivering that. With parents are a little different, because number one, in certain states, you have to be a certain age before you can say, you know what, I don't need this. Right? At the same time, they tell you and you interpret what they're telling you, and you say, well, okay, I don't know if that's really working for me. And you don't have to be overt with your response. You can just be a passive aggressive and just leave it to the side. Many children do. Many, I say children, those who have to depend on someone else for shelter, food, clothing, protection. Okay? And that last one, protection, is also a challenge, because as we know, because of the lockdown of the last year, those predators, abusive people, and they can be parents as well, guardians as well. We've seen that in the theology in the Catholic Church. They can be predators. So we have to be mindful of that. We have to be able to communicate that to another authority. And unfortunately, we've seen that it's not always received well, because of the socialization that family is the place to be held, to be secure, to be associated with. So perhaps that communication needs to be addressed. That form of acceptance, social acceptance and structure needs to be addressed. Spouses, same thing. We know that when we first come together, we have an escalated anticipation of making the relationship work. We then go into a number of different phases of assessing whether that is true. And if not, we move on. If it is, we open the doors a little further. There are times where, even when you think you're right, men, just say, no, I'm going to let my spouse, the woman in your life, take the lead, right? Let them take the lead. Simply because that's an observation dynamic that allows for the relationship to flourish. And again, what we said from the beginning, the intent of your engagement is everything. And the long-term long-term objective is to use these strategies that will endear you to that person, right? That will endear you to that person. You can get that perspective from those who have gone through relationships, both those who have been successful and those who have not been successful. Of course, we have others, because in life there are so many different areas that we need to address, right? There are so many different areas. By the way, in my newsletter, we have, and in fact, even in the coaching, we kind of group some conversations around you, the individual, the id, because that's really where most of the conversation initiates from, right? And that comes from socialization, family, theology, our expectations that are set for us by the environment that cultivates us, right? Then we talk about family, because that's really the stage where all that information, that programming comes from, right? And that family can be organizations, it can be groups, it can be federal state agencies that have brought us up, it can be grandparents, right, that have brought us up. Oh, we got a little message there. Cool. Okay, Andrew, thank you. Appreciate that. Individuals, you the id, family dynamics, because that's changing constantly. And it's not that it's changing just today. It has always been changing, because people find family and they define it in their terms, right? They define it in their terms. Then, of course, you have career and business, because if you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to be a senior executive in a corporation, and or you are a worker bee. Yes, you are a worker bee. You define that and you confirm that that is the environment you're going to work in and be in, and that's what you communicate. Whether you're a public servant, whether you're for profit, anything in between. And there are many forms of relationships within the career business world that we engage in. And then lastly, we use life perspective as the fourth element in our general discussions, because people do need to have a framework. It's not that life rolls out 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, or do, re, mi. It does not. At the same time, I believe, maybe to our own detriment, that that sequencing helps us to frame out where we are, right? It helps us to frame out. Let's take a quick look at some other areas here. Managing your affairs by using the access to the resources at hand. In the beginning of this discussion, I shared with you that when we talk about getting the monkey off our back, it is in fact to reach out to resources, to test whether the storm is as bad or the sunshine is as pleasant as we initially believe. Managing your affairs by using access to resources at hand. Today's access to information, and I gave you the example of walking in the woods with a tablet and being able to meditate, reflect, and analyze, research all at the same time, right? Because of the calming environment that these woods present for me, having the freedom to be able to do that in a remote fashion, and therefore the clarity that that brings. Sometimes negative information sets us on the right path. Quick story: buying a car. Individual says they have a car for sale. We run across their ad. We reach out to them, we connect, we assess, we do our due diligence, and all of a sudden, conversation changes. Well, we're going out to find a truck. What has that got to do with you and I selling your car? Further investigation, we find that the car is not registered and the license plates have been removed. Once again, why would you tell us about you going to buy a car when this car doesn't have a license plate and is not registered? Continuing conversation. Oh, now my son is looking at the car. Car's been sitting there for 5 years. Pristine. It's up on jacks. It's covered. It's in a garage. All it needs now is a butler to ask it, what beverage would you like? That communication set us off on a trajectory where we said, take that conversation out of the sequence, take it out of our attention, and continue looking elsewhere. That so-called negative experience put us into, and we did achieve, to get a nicer car, nicer terms, more pleasant engagement. That is that is an intangible value that I coined the phrase identifying intangible assets and producing tangible results. Look on the balance sheet of a company. There's a line item called goodwill. Coca-Cola, the long-term companies, I don't know how many there are. There's plenty of them. Look on the balance sheet of a corporate financial. You'll see that line item, goodwill. That can be millions, billions of dollars. And you can establish that with your relationships. Again, I'm going to take the personal with the business, morph the business into the personal, because the applications, the processes, the methodologies, the strategies, all of those can be shared, can be woven into one area as to another. They're actually all one in my perspective. They're all one. It's what tool do I need to use, to what extent, to get the desired and optimal outcomes. Where are we here? We are at 6:50 in the morning. This is our third broadcast that my intention is to do this every morning, 6 days a week. Sunday I rest, not because it's a holy day or a theological reflection of my beliefs. I just want one day to my family. And I turn off my cell phones. I turn off my laptops. Yes, in the evening I may come back and do a little work for a couple of hours. By and large, we communicate to ourselves that we're going to take that proverbial on point, turned on 24/7, that monkey off our back. And it's worked very well. Just as every year we have different slogans. One slogan was at one time, there's no such thing as a victim. And we qualified that. We had exceptions to that, just as we mentioned, right? You have exclamations, which are kind of wild cards, right? So you're flexible, yet you're fixed in place. You're agile, yet you have an underlying support mechanism. It's, what's that concrete? I think it's out of Germany. It literally flexes with the movement of the earth. In Japan, they have buildings that can withstand significant movement of the earth, right? We know these tectonic plates. These are all, knowing this information, what is the use, right? People will say, well, why do you need to know all this stuff? And why don't you just retire and disappear? Knowing this information allows me to engage in my world, in the world, in a more informed manner. It allows me then to manage my mental and physical state. It allows me to take time out when I need it, when you need it. Managing change through effective communications. The joke is, when we're babies, we're born, we're babies, we will wear diapers. Wait long enough, you will wear diapers again. It is an acceptance of your mortality. It's an acceptance of the reality of life, that it is pleasurable, it is engaging, it does demand 24/7. When I met Miriam, I said, I want 113% of you. She then sent me this plaque. I have it over here. I won't get it up. I won't get up and get it right now. But it says, love, honor, and negotiate. She hates it because of that negotiation part. We have fun with it. We tease it. We play with it. We knead it like bread, right? We knead it. We mold it into what we want. And every now and again, yes, it will be split apart, and we will have to find time to recognize that we missed a communication or two. Our intent is to support the effective, healthy communications. Our intent is to manage life's changes favorably. Our intent is to recognize that we are vulnerable. Our attitude is to attack it and attack it and attack it until 99%, what is that, Six Sigma level of perfection? There's another saying here. Let me read this one. Don't let someone who gave up on their dreams talk you out of yours. And it's the simple things, the repetitive, simple things that keep you focused. You don't have to go off on the deep end with some new fandangled whiz bang wang construct. You know, in speaking with some athletes with the blue coats, with having the fortune of speaking with Isaac Hayes when he was in New York with what is it, Scientology, with speaking and reading, by the way, autobiographies. You find that it is staying on point. It is being demanding of yourself not to let that monkey on your back ride you. Take it off. Let it go. You don't need it. So with that, I am going to come off today a little earlier, and I trust that you will have the opportunity to check out my website, ronaldmallen.com. We have a lot of free complimentary resources. We're still working out that content in terms of how you will get to it, because we're looking at whether we should have PDFs of those resources. We've broken them down again into individual, family, careers and business, life perspectives. And we're introducing food, living food, because I guarantee you, you know, we did that little experiment with Ash, Vietnamese potbelly pig. Yes, we had one. And we had one in a very built up urban environment. So we didn't have a field where the pig could walk out or run. And our utility guy, PSE&G, thank you, he would come in, very polite, read the meter, and leave. Not a word. The pig's feces, Ash's feces, were not very fragrant. We changed the food to fruits and vegetables. And literally within 30 days, there was a complete change. The utility guy came back the next 2 or 3 months and said, I know you have a pig. I'm not going to report you. Why doesn't it smell? So it's recognizing, communicating to yourself. And instead of saying it's more expensive, instead of saying it's more work, instead of saying it's not what I want, realize that the whole process of food preparation is to socialize with your family. And for those who don't like the family, have the decency to leave. Take that monkey off their back. You're the proverbial monkey. Have the respect, have the decency, have the courtesy. Yes, who said communications was always going to be pleasant? Who said that we'll always agree? We will not. I don't expect to. In fact, I will use my expression here. I don't want to like you. I want to understand you. That's the difference. I want to understand you, and that requires more work. That is an intent because, again, experience of coming through various social, educational, and working environments. I find it healthier and more honest to myself to practice that belief. Oh, by the way, check out the site, ronaldanallen.com. Go over to support, drop down to Managing Life's Changes podcast. You'll see some background historical information of my use of media, terrestrial radio, blog talk radio, etc. That is kind of my lineage in this profession of communications. Again, what you do, how you do it, how you communicate to yourself is everything. And you always have another chance to reinvent yourself. You always have another opportunity to present your content, your meaning, your intent. I think it was Spike Lee who said, "You are a compendium of all the work that you've done to date." What I'm saying, the important thing is going forward, where are you going? Who are you associating with? That you can help them as much as you'd like them to help you. And I even have that on my, I believe it's my coaching page, because now the site is starting to get a little hefty. At the same time, I'm reining it in by keeping the main services, like business consulting, my coaching, individual, couples, families, groups, and organizations, even faith based. I have a module that I offer. And then with services, support, and most importantly, resources, all free, all complimentary. So check it out when you have time. I am constantly sending out new information. I didn't get into solution focused brief therapy as much as I wanted to today. Perhaps I will, I know I will, as we go forward, because its application is timeless right now. We need to ask better questions. And getting the monkey off your back perhaps is a precursor for that, right? It's for that. So enjoy the day, and we'll see each other tomorrow. Bring your questions. I want to build a community of why people. Why must we do this and why must we do that? All right, let's see how we exit. What is it? Was it Wacky Races to Megatage? I'm out of here.